Okay, this is Econ Journal 1 entry. I'm going to start by citing my sources. My first source is the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities.org. My second source is the whitehouse.gov, and my third post is the Washington Post. All right. So the first question, what is the rate of economic growth in the recession in 2020 and recovery in 2021? Okay, so the economic growth during the recession was the decline. Real GDP had a decline of 5.1% at an annual rate, which is pretty significant if you think about it. I don't really have that too often unless we're in like 2008 during the Great Recession. And then the annual rate was 5.1, but in the second quarter of last year, which is what, like March, May, April, that time span, it was down 31.2% in the second quarter. But after that massive downturn, it started slowing down quarter by quarter, and by 2021, at the end of 2021, the end of 2020 started to pick up again. And then in the first quarter of 2021, GDP was up 6.3%. And by the end of the growth, it slowed down to 4.5% annual rate. But even though the GDP increased so much in 2021, it was still down 0.8% of the peak of the last expansion we had in the United States. Okay. Question 2, the unemployment rate during the recession in 2020 and recovery in 2021. Okay. So obviously unemployment during the pandemic was pretty bad. I mean, they were paying people to stay home and not work. But it was so bad that the total, not including farming, employment fell 20.7 million in April 2020, which is, it's crazy how much it actually fell. I mean, everyone knew it fell a lot, but no one knew it that much. After it fell, it did bounce back. In July 2021, the job market increased by 1.1 million. And then in August 2021, it increased by another 235,000. But even though it increased a lot and bounced back, it was still 5.3 million less jobs in August 2021 than February 2020, which bouncing back like the economy did is good, but it's kind of staggering how much we're still lacking from when we're at our peak of an expansion after the pandemic. The employment growth has continued to resume and regain after COVID-19 losses, but COVID-19 losses wiped out all the majority and the large shares of economic growth from 2010 to 2019. Question 3, inflation during the recession in 2020 and the recovery in 2021. Okay. The inflation will continue to increase the next several months because of 3 things, which this comes from the whitehouse.gov. Because of the base effects, supply chain disruption, like shipping and all that, and the pent-up demand after the pandemic. The main reason for the high increase in demand and the increased inflation is the demand is so high for things like travel, basically everything that was low in 2020, the suppliers had to cut back on their production and their resources of it. But since everyone was back to normal life in 2021, they don't have the supply for it, and demand's getting so hiked up that the price for it just keeps rising, supply and demand. In August 2021, inflation rate was 5.3%. In 2020, it did drop, though. The inflation rate did drop. So going all the way back to 2021 to 2020, in 2011, it was 3.2%. In 2020, dropped all the way to 1.2%. And that's mainly just because people weren't buying as much in 2020. I mean, of course they weren't. We're all in lockdown. But yeah, there's so much not being purchased that inflation rate dropped all the way to 1.2%. I like doing this. This was actually fun, looking this stuff up and finding resources and figuring out what the pandemic actually did to our society. But I mean, we all knew a general idea of what was happening, but seeing the statistics and the percentages of how the economy shifted from one of our all-time highs during the expansion to one of our all-time lows, and we're going up again. But realistically, in my personal belief, I I believe we're just in a bubble, and it's only a matter of time before the housing market crashes. And the last time the housing market crashed was 2008, and who knows what's actually going to happen if it does crash, or if the stock market crashes, or if the expansion or the recovery bubble will actually burst, because it's going to be interesting to see, because we were so low during the pandemic, and now we're starting to recover, but we'll see what happens. All right, that was Econ Journal 1 entry.